You know that sinking feeling when you look at your business bank account? Your revenue looks great. Maybe you even had a killer launch last month, but somehow there's never enough left over for you. You're working harder than ever, but your personal bank account doesn't reflect all that effort. If you're nodding your head right now, you're going to want to stay tuned because I can't wait to share something that has absolutely transformed how I manage money in my business. And I don't use the word transformed lightly. Today, we're talking about the Profit First method, and more importantly, how you can actually put it into practice in your own business, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur working from home. And stick around until the end because I'm going to give you some really practical, actionable steps to get started right away. You're listening to the Productive Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm your host, Tonia Kendrick, and I'm on a mission to help online business owners like you focus on the right things and take imperfect action. Every week, you'll get my best tips on everything from time management and content creation to planning effectively and managing mindset issues, all in an effort to help you become more productive. So let's jump into this episode. You know, it's funny, even after 26 years in banking, dealing with business accounts and advising entrepreneurs on their finances, I still found myself doing what so many of us do, checking my bank balances and making decisions based on whatever number I saw there. Sound familiar? It's probably because you don't know a different way. So let me give you some backstory. Back when I was a banker, we had benchmarks for everything. So anytime I set a goal, I had a good idea what would be realistic, what would be a best practice, what would be a good target to shoot for. But when I started my own business, I didn't have those benchmarks. So I had no idea what kinds of targets to set for things like how much I should pay myself, how much I should spend on operating expenses, etc. And lots of times I felt lost and I couldn't figure out why I was generating all this revenue, but there never seemed to be any left over at the end of the month. But then I discovered Profit First, and it completely changed my approach to my business finances. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to implement this system in your business, and more importantly, how to adapt it specifically for online entrepreneurs like us. So what exactly is Profit First? Well, it was developed by Mike Michalowicz. He's written a book, and I'll drop a link to the book in the show notes. And it flips the traditional profit formula on its head. Instead of the old income minus expenses equals profit, we're going to flip it around and take our profit first. This might sound simple, and it actually took me a little time to kind of wrap my head around it, but it really is profound. Think about it. In traditional accounting, profit is what's left over after all the expenses are paid. But how often do we actually have anything meaningful left over? Usually, we find ways to spend whatever's in our account. It's like a financial Parkinson's law. Expenses rise to meet available income. So let's break down exactly how to make this work in your business. And I'm going to adapt this specifically for online business owners because, let's face it, our businesses look a little bit different from traditional brick and mortar operations. Step 1 is to assess your current financial situation. First things first, you need to know your numbers. This is where my banking background really comes in handy. I've seen thousands of business financial statements, and I can tell you that the businesses that succeed are the ones that know their numbers inside out. So pull up your bank statements and financial statements from the last 3 months. Look at how much money is coming in, your total revenue, where your money is going, categorize your expenses, what you're actually taking home as pay, and what percentage of your revenue goes to each category. I want you to be really honest here. The first time I did this exercise back in 2020, I was shocked to discover that I was only taking home about 15% of my revenue. And I'm embarrassed to say that my expenses exceeded my revenue. Clearly, that wasn't sustainable. So take a little time to really analyze your spending. Are all those business tools really necessary? Could you consolidate some of your subscriptions? Are you paying for things you're not using? This exercise alone can be really eye-opening. Step 2 is setting up your system. Now, here's where I'm going to deviate a bit from traditional profit-first methodology. Mike recommends setting up multiple bank accounts. I think it's 5 or 7, some insane number of accounts. I've found a more streamlined approach that works beautifully for online entrepreneurs. It's an app called You Need a Budget, also known as YNAB. Let me tell you why YNAB is perfect for this. It works like a virtual envelope system, if you're familiar with cash envelopes, allowing you to allocate every dollar without needing multiple physical bank accounts. You can see all your allocations in one place. It's just much easier to manage than juggling all those bank accounts. And you can easily adjust your allocations as needed without dealing with bank transfers. Here's how I set up my system in YNAB. Create a category group called Profit First Buckets with categories for profit, owner's comp, and tax. And then have a category group for operating expenses with line items for each expense category. Set up tracking for your target percentages and use YNAB's goals feature to ensure that you're hitting your allocation targets. The beauty of this system is that it gives you the same psychological benefit of separate accounts without the administrative headache. Step 3, determine your percentages. This is where it gets really interesting. For online businesses, I've found these percentages work really well as targets. Profit, 5 to 10%. Tax, 10 to 15%. Do be sure to consult your tax professional on this one. Owner's comp, 40 to 50%, and operating expenses, 25 to 30%. Now, these percentages might look different from what you're doing right now, and that's totally okay. Here's how I recommend you transition. First, calculate your current percentages. Be honest with yourself. Then set starter percentages that move you in the right direction. And 3, gradually adjust them over time toward your target percentages. Let me share my own journey with these allocation percentages. When I started, profit was 0%. Don't be surprised if yours is the same thing. If you are not specifically taking a profit payout right now, then your profit is 0%. Tax, 5%. Owner's comp, 15%. And operating expenses, 100%. Yes, that adds up to more than 100%, which is why my credit card debt kept increasing. After 3 months of following Profit First, my profit allocation was 3%, tax 10%, owner's comp 30%, operating expenses 55%. Now, this is what it looks like today. My current percentages are profit 5%, tax 15%, owner's comp 40%, and operating expenses 30%. You may notice that only adds up to 85%. I mentioned earlier that I have some credit card debt, so I have 10% allocated to pay down my credit card. Also notice this didn't happen overnight, and that's important to understand. It took me about 18 months to get to my current percentages. And again, that's totally okay. The key here is progress, not perfection. Step 4, schedule regular allocations. Now, Mike recommends that you pick 2 days each month for your allocations. He uses the 10th and the 25th. I actually only do this once a month because that works better for my brain. I do it when I'm closing out my books for the month, which is usually on the first Friday of the following month. So, for example, for October, I closed out my books on the first Friday of November. You do what works for you. If twice a month works better, do that. Either way, on your allocation days, open up YNAB, look at all income received since your last allocation, distribute that money according to your target percentages, and review any adjustments needed based on upcoming expenses. Let me walk you through what this looks like in practice. Let's say I received $5,000 in revenue. Here's how I would allocate it with my current percentages. Profit is 5%, so that's $250. Tax is 15%, so $750. Owner's comp is 40%, so $2,000. Operating expenses, 30%, which is $1,500. And debt reduction, 10%, $500. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but what if I don't have enough money to allocate? I hear you. When I first started, I was nervous about that too. Here's what worked for me. Start where you are. Take those percentages you calculated at the beginning. Where is your money going now? Increase your profit, tax, and owner's comp by 1 percentage point each, and decrease operating expenses by 3 percentage points. The important thing is to start the habit. Then you can adjust the percentages again every quarter, slowly increasing your profit, tax, and owner's comp allocations and decreasing expenses. Another common challenge is irregular income. As online entrepreneurs, we often have lumpy income. Maybe you do launches, or your membership has periodic enrollment periods. Here's how to handle that. In high-income months, stick to your percentages. Save extra in your owner's comp category for leaner months. In other words, don't pay out everything you allocate for owner's comp. And don't increase your regular operating expenses. Then, in lower income months, maintain your basic allocations, draw from your saved owner's comp, and look for opportunities to reduce operating expenses. My biggest struggle was getting my operating expenses down to 30%. That is not something that happened or even could have happened overnight because I had various things I paid for annually, but I chipped away at it and reminded myself to keep taking baby steps. Let me tell you what happened in my business after implementing this system. I built up an emergency fund for my business. I know exactly how much I should pay myself each month, and I actually do pay myself every month now. My stress levels around money dropped dramatically. I started making better decisions about investments in my business. I take quarterly profit distributions from my business now. I never did that before. I don't have to worry about tax time because I know that my tax account will be funded every quarter. And I have a clear picture of what I need to earn to reach my goals. All right, let's wrap this up with your immediate next steps. Today, download your last 3 months of bank statements and financial statements if you have them. Calculate your current allocation percentages. Where is the money going now? Sign up for YNAB if you haven't already. I'll drop a link to it in the show notes. Tomorrow, set up your YNAB categories. Determine your starter allocation percentages and schedule your regular allocation days. Then next week, make your first allocations. Review your recurring expenses and identify areas where you can reduce operating costs. This month, track your progress, make adjustments as needed, and pat yourself on the back for taking this step to get your finances under control. That's all for today's episode. Next time, I'll be talking about creative ways to celebrate your achievements. Until then, remember, profit isn't an accident. It's a decision. Make that decision today. And before you go, if you like what you hear on the Productive Entrepreneur podcast, then come check out the Organized Business Toolbox. It's my monthly membership for solo entrepreneurs who want to feel in control and take imperfect action to move their businesses forward. When you join, you'll get instant access to the Training and Resource Vault, and a new toolbox or course drops every month. Plus, we have monthly Voxer office hours where you can privately ask me questions and get my direct feedback. If that sounds like something you need, the link is in the show notes, or visit ToniaKendrick.com, and I'll see you on the inside.